Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. We are here now live in the Our Healthy Senior Dog Facebook group, and I just have us open on my tablet so that I can watch the chat, but then I didn't think I had my volume off. There we go. So, happy Senior Dog Sunday, everyone. If you are here with us live, can you let us know by just saying hello in the chat section? If you are watching this later on and you're watching the replay, can you just comment replay? Let us know that you are here. I would also love to know in the chat if you can tell us how old your current dog is that you have right now, and also maybe let us know how old the oldest dog you've ever had is. So my oldest dog that I had was my childhood dog, Bubbles. She was a lab. She lived till 16 and a half. And my dog currently is Maggie, who will be 11 in March. So if we haven't met before, my name is Shauna Slobodian. I am a physiotherapist. I'm a canine rehab therapist, and I am the host of this group, Our Healthy Senior Dogs. And I am very excited today to talk to my friend and colleague, Stella Barnett. Stella is also a physio and canine rehab therapist. Stella is the owner of Paws and Motion Canine Rehabilitation in Huntsville, Ontario. If you have no idea where that is, we'll ask Stella for directions. North of Toronto-ish is what I always think of.
Yeah.
So welcome, Stella.
Hello.
Alrighty, so some of you may recognize Stella. She's been here with me in the group before to do an interview. We did a live chat way back in 2021. I couldn't believe how long ago it was when I had a look. And she came in at that time to talk to me about GULP, or geriatric onset laryngeal paralysis and polyneuropathy, which is a mouthful. But if you want to see that video or you saw it before and you want to know where to find it, if you look under the guide section of the group and you look for guide number 6, which is called Senior Dog Ailments, you'll see that video there. I rewatched it on Friday and I was saying to Stella that I thought we did a pretty good job. And there's lots of good information in that video. And even though it's almost 3 years old now, that all that information there is still relevant. So the reason that I asked Stella to join me today, and I think you guys all know that now that you've seen the adverts that I created for this, is because her dog Hartley, who we talked about in that video we did on GULP, turned 16 recently, which is just remarkable, especially given knowing that he's got some chronic health issues of his own. So I, along with probably most of you, if not all of you, would want to know how the heck she got him to 16 with, maybe not the rosiest of picture and everything going perfectly. So thank you, Stella, for sharing your time with us this afternoon and hopefully to give us some insight on maybe some things that we're already doing right. Probably a lot of us are, especially if we're in this group, but maybe giving us some other things to think about. So thanks again. And I'm just going to check how we're doing in our comments here. Helen is watching us. Hey, Helen, how's it going? All righty. So I thought maybe the most logical place to start, Stella, would be going back to the beginning and talking a bit about Hartley's beginning with you. Maybe reintroducing Hartley, what kind of dog he is, and maybe what age he came to you at.
Yeah. So Hartley is he's a Labrador Standard Poodle cross, or first generation Doodle. So I always joke that I had a Doodle before Doodles were cool, because 16 years ago they were only just beginning. He is a wavy coated Doodle, so he doesn't look like most people think how Doodles look, because he's not curly. But I had seen a dog, we'd been apple picking, and I'd seen this dog on the farm and said, wow, that is a stunning dog. What kind of dog is that? And went to the people who own the place, and they told me that's what their dog was, a Labrador Standard Poodle cross, and found a breeder who was breeding them and had a litter of, I believe there were 7 in his litter available. And he was 12 weeks old. So we went to go look, and Had it down to two puppies, a male or a female, and I won over my ex and got the boy. And yeah, he came home, I think 3 days later. We had, we'd never had a dog before, so had to go and buy all the stuff that we needed. And
Mm.
we'd been researching and planning. We knew we wanted to get a dog. So yeah, he came home at 12 weeks old, and neither of us had had a dog before, so we didn't really know what we were doing.
You never had a dog before
No,
Hartley?
no,
Okay,
I
because
never
he
had a
was like
pet
your
before. He's
gateway
my first
dog.
pet.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's something I didn't, I just assumed you'd always had dogs. So
No.
that's
My dad's
amazing.
side of the family are animal lovers, so grew up around people that had dogs, cats, horses, rabbits. But we moved around a lot when I was a kid, so could never have any pets. And I'm actually allergic to dogs too, so that was another
Me
reason.
too.
Yeah,
Oh well, you
yeah,
just deal with it when you love it, right? That's
yeah, yeah.
amazing. So I'm curious, and this has nothing to do with the topic at hand, but back 16 years ago, did
Yeah.
they call them Labradoodles or Doodles? Like everything's a doodle now.
Yeah, yes, they did. Yes.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, first generation Labradoodle.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And I only know this because we were chatting before we went live, but Stella was saying she doesn't know what happened to those other puppies in that litter.
Yeah, I'd love to know. I'd love to know if he still has some siblings that are around as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, amazing. So as Hartley got older, and I mean, he was your first dog, was there anything unique that you feel like you did in puppyhood or as an adult dog that maybe set you guys apart from, your average dog owner?
Yeah,
I'm going to
I
put you
don't
at above
know.
average.
Yeah, I mean, we probably did some things that I would tell people now were the wrong things to do. He was a
Hmm.
very, very energetic, smart dog that got bored easily, was in trouble a lot. So we ran him a lot when he was young, or played fetch with him a lot to try and, a tired dog is a
Hmm.
good dog and all of that. So to try and tire him out. And we had done puppy class, and it wasn't until we sort of really got back into regular classes and started exercising his mind that he started to become a little bit more pleasant to live with. So yeah, I
Hmm.
look back now and think, gosh, he was really young, and we were jogging around the neighborhood with him, trying to tire him out, and all the things that we're like, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do for his joints, but
Hmm.
he's still
Hmm.
here and he's doing okay. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I'm just going to draw everyone's attention to over Stella's shoulder. Um, do you want to talk about some of the other things that you've done exercise fitness wise with Hartley? Because there's some great achievements behind you there.
Yeah, so we got into doing agility. He was a dog that really needed a job to do, and I live now quite rurally, and really agility was the only thing that was offered up here, so that's what we did. And he actually got his Canadian Agility Championship, which is the really big red ribbon you can see behind me. And he got a bunch of titles actually beyond his championship. He turned out to be a really, really good agility dog once we worked out what we were doing. And then the other ribbon, the smaller one, is his Trick Dog Championship, which he got when he was 13 or 14. I got a puppy and COVID happened, and I was trying to find things to do with the puppy. So I started doing the online Trick Dog titles with the puppy. And I was like, well, I might as well do this with Hartley too. So he actually ended up getting his Trick Dog Championship at quite a senior age.
So you can teach an old dog new tricks. And I know that's
Yes.
cliche, and I know,
Yes.
yeah, but that's,
The
yeah.
hardest was the behavior chain. You have to teach them. So I taught him to pull open a crate door, go in the crate, and pull the crate door closed behind him. And it took months to teach him. And he is a really smart dog. And that's when I started to realize, oh, he's getting some old dog cognitive
Mhm,
changes because it
mhm,
just took him so long to learn. Yeah.
mm,
Mm-hmm.
mhm. So that kind of leads into the next question that I have for you. And like I had alluded to when we started, that Hartley hasn't gotten to 16 without bumps in the road. One of those bumps being gulp, or that geriatric onset laryngeal paralysis, which, considering how long ago we did that video, he's
Mm-hmm.
had for quite a while.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about, how that diagnosis came to be and any other health, kind of chronic health issues that
Yeah.
he's had along the way?
Yeah, I think he did agility until he was 11. I retired him at 11. And I can't remember if he was 12 or 13 when just at his annual physical, I mentioned that, there's now what we know as the classic signs. His bark was starting to change. That was the main thing. And he got that sort of old dog excited sounding breathing. And we've talked back then about it was probably laryngeal paralysis. It's very common in Labradors, and he's half Labrador. So yeah, that was the beginning. Other health wise, other than that, he's been really good. I mean, he now has some arthritic stuff going on, which
Mm-hmm.
I mean, an old dog that ran hard and did agility for 9 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, so he was not easy on his body, partly by his choice too. Um, yeah, but otherwise, the rest of him, heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, or last time
All
we checked, we're
doing
doing okay. Yeah.
well. So what was it like? So around 12 or 13. So it's been 4-ish years, if we say
Hmm.
that. What was it like getting that diagnosis at the vet that day? Like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, I think, and I was already sort of thinking along those lines, but I didn't know a lot about it. Um, and was just sort of like, oh, okay, well, he'd never been, even from younger, he had not been super heat tolerant. I had to be really careful trialing in the summer. He just didn't enjoy it. I don't like the heat
Mm-hmm.
either, so it worked out fine. Um, yeah, and then at that time, was like, well, he's not bad enough to do tie back surgery.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've made it to 16. I'm like, would it have changed my mind if I'd known that he was going to get here anyway without the
Right.
surgery?
Mm-hmm.
But he's a very kind of steady temperamented dog. I mean, he doesn't get super excited, and he calms down quickly. So touch wood, so far we've never had any of those sort of bad breathing crises that you read
Mm-hmm.
about dogs having.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of gets a little bit excited, and I'm like, okay, take a break. And, oh, okay, I'll take a break then. And
He listens to mom.
he's a good boy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah. And
so for
they're
anyone,
sort of no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for anyone who's wondering what Stella meant by that tie back
Mm.
surgery. So with gulp, basically the folds in the throat that keep food and water from going down the wrong hole, they don't open and close when they should. So they don't open up well to let air through, which when a dog can't get enough air in, it can be very scary for them to feel breathless. They're less heat tolerant. So what they do is they tie back one side so that air can still flow through. So that's what Stella was referring to. If you want to know more, go back to that guide 6 to see us and from 3 years ago. Yeah, sorry, and I interrupted you
Mm.
there.
Oh, I can't remember what I was going to say. It's
Okay.
fine.
So we talked a lot in that video about your management of gulp. And you mentioned as well that Hartley has arthritis, which I think most of us who have a senior dog, whether we've been told they have a diagnosis of arthritis, we might suspect they have arthritis. So a lot of us are dealing with that with our dogs. I mean, Maggie's had arthritis. She's diagnosed at age 4, and so we're almost 7 years on now. Do you mind touching on some of the things you're doing for his arthritis? And they might probably seem very simple to you, but I think oftentimes we think, oh my goodness, like there must be this holy grail of that one thing that I need to do for arthritis. And if Stella's the expert with this older dog, she works with dogs. I think it'd be very helpful to hear, what you do for arthritis.
Yeah, I think the same as what most people. He has a really, really good orthopedic bed. It probably cost more than my mattress did, and he's a big dog, so everything has to be big.
Yeah.
So yeah, he has a really, really nice bed for sleeping on. My house is carpeted, which is kind of gross, but it gives him good traction. So part of the gulp is that they start to lose their awareness of starts in the back legs and works forwards of where their limbs are and how to use them. So carpet means that he can most of the time get up by himself still. My kitchen is linoleum, and he can't, if he lies down in the kitchen, he can't
Mm,
get up. I have to help him.
mm,
Yeah.
mhm.
My house is mostly on one level, but it's a raised bungalow, so he has to do stairs to get in and out. to get to the backyard. And that's kind of one of my criteria for him still being here is we have to be able to manage him on the stairs.
Mhm.
I want him to
Mhm.
be able to go outside. So everything's
Yep.
gated so that he can't access the stairs unless I'm with him, so that he can't try. Because every now and then he would still try to do them, and often
Mhm.
that did not go well. So yeah, they're closed off now that he can't get to them unless I'm there. And if he's doing the stairs, he always wears a harness.
At what age like, how long have the stairs been blocked off to him?
Not long. I would say only about
Okay.
a year. Because
Okay.
until then he could mostly still manage them by himself, but every now and then
Mhm.
his legs would get kind of disorganized, and he wouldn't wait for me to go up them with him, which is when I started blocking them off because he's impatient.
Mhm. Mhm. Anything else that you're doing for his arthritis? They may be even things that you don't even consider anymore. They're just so
Yeah.
habit.
He's been on various joint supplements over the years, and I don't really know if one has been better than the other.
Yeah.
He's currently on Antinol, which
Mhm.
has made his coat fabulous. So in my head, I like to think it's
Mhm.
doing the same thing inside his joints.
And is that a concentrated omega-3? I know I've read
Yeah, it's
about.
green lip mussel, but it comes
Okay,
in
that's
those
what it was.
tiny, tiny little capsules.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's his coat is really nice since he's been on it. So I'm
Mhm.
imagining that that's happening in other places in his body too, that there is a little bit of shininess inside his joints.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That a healthy inside makes for a healthier outside. I think that there's
Yeah,
probably a lot to be said about that.
yeah.
Hmm.
He was on Metacam for a while, and then it started to upset his stomach. We tried
Hmm.
gabapentin, thinking that maybe he's a lot, structure wise, he's reasonably long backed.
Hmm.
So we weren't sure if he was getting some kind of neuropathic pain. We tried gabapentin, and that also really upset his stomach. And I didn't
Hmm.
see any difference in his behavior when he was on it.
Okay.
So he's currently on a different anti-inflammatory called Onsior, which is a COX-2 inhibitor, and he's tolerating it really well. So he's
Yeah.
super stoic. His behavior is never different on or off pain meds, which makes it really
Hmm.
difficult to know if they're
Hmm.
helping or not helping. And
Hmm.
because his deficits are mostly neurological versus due to pain, again, it's hard. But I'm like, he's 16, he's got arthritis. I can feel a little bit
Hmm.
creaking in one of his hips, so he needs to be on something.
Hmm. Um, Maybe Stella, you can comment on how your vet has been involved with your care of Hartley as he's gotten older, because certainly the medications, a lot of people always have questions about gabapentin and should my dog be on anti-inflammatories? And you and
Mm-hmm.
I, as canine rehab therapists, we see trends, but really, we are not the ones people should be going to ask
Yeah.
for meds. I cringe a little bit in Facebook groups when people want to know what meds other people's dogs are. And I understand why they ask the question, but it is such a bigger question than us lay people can really answer.
Yeah.
Like it's almost it's inappropriate for us to answer. Like we can share what our dog is on, but
Mm-hmm.
comparing apples and oranges to try to compare a
Yeah,
dog.
and every dog is different, just like people. They
Hmm.
respond differently to different
Hmm.
medications, tolerate different ones better or worse, or different
Hmm.
combinations of medications. So it's really just trial and error between you and
Hmm.
your vet to see
Hmm. Yeah.
which one makes them feel the best.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
so I imagine as a senior, he's probably at the vet at least twice a year,
No, he
maybe.
goes once a year. He just has his one annual physical, and the last two times I've taken him, I thought, oh well, this will be the last one that he has, and I just booked his appointment for March.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. And the other ailment, if we want to call them ailments or
Yeah.
diagnoses or suspected diagnosis, you
Mhm.
also mentioned a bit of dementia or old dog
Yeah.
cognitive issue. Do you want to share a bit about your experience with that? We haven't talked a lot about it in the group actually, and it's probably a topic we should talk about more.
Yeah, he definitely is a little kind of like he forgets what he's doing, kind of like we do.
Mhm.
He'll go into a room and then just be standing there, clearly
Mhm.
thinking, what did I come in here for? Or if I'm trying to get, I have three dogs, two quite a bit younger, and then him. So if I'm trying to get everybody outside, he'll sometimes take 2 or 3 steps and then he stops as if he's forgetting that we're going to the back door. And because the other two are bouncing up and down at the door waiting to go
Yeah.
out. I'm like, Hartley, come on, let's go. And he's deaf too. So shouting at him makes no difference whatsoever. And I usually have to pat him on the butt, like, let's go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He went through a phase of what I thought was sundowning, where he was really restless a lot during the night.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's all gone away since we changed his pain medication. So I'm thinking that maybe it was like
Ah.
gastric discomfort that was leading him to be
Mm-hmm.
kind of pacing a little bit at nighttime, because that's gone away. And if it was true
Mm-hmm.
sundowning, it would have probably got worse.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's good for owners to recognize that there are so many things that can have similar symptoms or
Mm-hmm.
signs. And, again, like you had said, a little bit of trial and error to see what changes things. But that restlessness is at night is something that I hear from owners a lot. And is it pain? Is it
Yeah.
acid reflux? Is it, stomach discomfort? Is it
Mm-hmm.
sundowning and your dog is getting, activated as the sun goes down, really is what's happening in there. They've got that day-night confusion, so there's so many things there. Hmm.
And he doesn't remember. I mean, he was a really, really well-trained dog.
Hmm.
He competed in agility. He was trained in scent detection. And when I started training my younger dogs in scent detection, I thought, oh, well, I'll give him a go too. He used to do this. He doesn't remember it. And I tried
Mm.
to reteach him, and he couldn't learn it. And I thought,
Mm.
well, maybe his sense of smell isn't so good. Maybe he can't smell the odor, but he can still find treats by smell on the floor. And his vision's not very good, so he can't see close up at
Hmm.
all.
Yeah.
So I know that he must be finding them by smell, because there's no way that he can see them.
Hmm.
Yeah.
What's Hartley's activity level like now? Like you mentioned, like he's retired from agility. He kind of putters out in the
Yeah. Yeah.
backyard.
It's pretty
Scent
much
detection.
it.
Okay, yeah. But
Yeah.
but you're
Sometimes
still
we'll walk, but
prioritize, yeah,
mhm.
but prioritizing doing some sort of movement every day, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he's out. He goes out in the backyard before work, when I get home from work, and then usually dinner time and before bed, depending on the
Hmm.
temperature. And in the spring where I live, it gets very buggy.
Mm,
So that affects how long they can spend outside.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's happy to kind of, if we're doing stuff in the house, he'll follow me into whichever room. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. Or he often lies, there's a line in the floor where the carpet stops at the living room to the kitchen, because it's open plan, and he'll most times lie on the carpet. It's sensible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My friends have property, so if we can get up there, he'll have a
Yeah.
little like meander through the woods.
Hmm.
We usually do a short loop with him, take him back to either the car or back to their house, and then we
Hmm.
go off with the young ones and let them
Hmm.
burn off their crazies.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. The last time we spoke about Hartley back in 2021, you were still doing some, I know we had talked about rear foot targeting with him at that time.
Mm.
Are you still doing any exercise like that? Yeah.
It's like the shoemaker's kids, right? They don't have any shoes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, he
Yeah.
really doesn't know where his back feet are anymore.
Mm.
Like if you do
Hmm.
the paw flip, they just
Yeah.
stay upside down.
Mm.
Yeah, both sides.
Yeah. So he's got
Yeah.
his limitations, certainly.
Yeah. And I think that's what affects his ability, especially going down the stairs.
Hmm.
He can get his front feet down, but then he can't organize his back feet to come down the
Mm.
next step. And because he's
Hmm.
long, he spans about easily 3 steps at a time on the
Okay.
stairs.
How much does he weigh, or how much should he weigh at like his healthiest weight if he's velocity?
At his prime, he was probably around 72 pounds, but very muscular. Now
Hmm.
I think he's about, last time I weighed him, he was 68 to 70 pounds.
Okay. So he's maintained pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, his back end does not have much in the way of muscle. His butt's pretty bony now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So this may be an emotional question.
Mm-hmm.
At least it would be if someone asked me this
Mm-hmm.
question. As Hartley has aged, especially like the last couple years, year,
Yeah.
6 months, even up to now, how have you felt or thought about Hartley as he's gotten older? Like, can you talk about like the emotional or, the planning ahead, or because as much as we say live
Yes.
in the moment, enjoy your dog now,
Hmm.
no, I don't think any of us can be that terribly objective with our own dog's mortality. Like, I know I'm
No.
not Peggy at all.
Yeah. And I live where we live. It's about an hour and 45-minute drive to an emergency vet. So I'm
Mm,
very aware. One of the reasons I don't like him getting excited is if he has a breathing crisis. We have a long way to go to get help.
hmm hmm
Um, and the last thing I want to do is be flying down the highway with a dog that's suffocating in the car. So
Yeah.
yeah,
hmm
I definitely, that part of it I don't like to think about very much. And I think most people that have an old dog, you hope they're gonna just go in their sleep one day and you'll wake up and they're
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
And yeah, like we have a good vet clinic, but they're about, for me, about 40-45 minutes drive away, so there's nothing
hmm
close.
Right.
um so I sort of have in my mind criteria for, he has to be able to do the stairs,
hmm
because I don't, to me, if he can't go outside, if he's just stuck in the house
Yeah.
all the time, then that's not
hmm
much fun for him. He's a dog that's always enjoyed being outside.
hmm
He has to be continent urinary wise, because my house is
Yeah.
carpeted and I work outside the house. So
Yeah.
I don't want him having to wear diapers and
hmm
be sitting there being wet for hours while I'm at work.
hmm
So kind of they're my two main physical things that, once we
hmm
lose those,
Yep.
um, and just kind of being engaged in life still. If he just sleeps all day and doesn't want to do anything, but
Yep.
if he sees that I'm like getting the young ones up to go out, he'll still like, oh, can I come too?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I think something important to point out is that your qualifications for what you deem quality of life for
Oh yeah.
Hartley and what you can manage doesn't mean that's everyone else's list,
Mm-mm,
because
mm-mm.
everyone has their own limitations as far as
Yeah.
what they can handle. And I've had that conversation with
Mm-hmm.
owners before, that they've been told, whether it be their vet, by a stranger on the street, that's said, like, your dog, what are you doing? Like, you're being cruel to your dog.
Mm-hmm.
And when they have no idea what is going on in this dog's life or how they're being cared for. So I
Yeah.
think knowing your own personal criteria and having some time to reflect on that, I
Mm-hmm.
think is so important. Because I think it's good to think about that, trying to think about it objectively ahead of time instead of getting into that moment or into that time where it's much harder to be objective, where you can't,
Yeah.
you haven't made that list to go back to, whether you've written it down or you've got it in your
Yeah,
mind to
exactly. I think if
consider.
I had a house that was easy access out the back door into the garden without stairs,
Mhm,
or if I worked from home, then probably my criteria would be different. Or if I had
mhm.
somebody else, I live on my own, so trying to
Yep.
get him in and out of the house when he's not having a good
hmm
day is physically hard on me.
hmm
I'm not a super big, tall person, so yeah, if there
Yeah.
were
And
two
if
of
you
you, it would be
falter,
easier.
yeah. And if you falter, you've got
Hmm.
the younger two dogs to still consider
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the million-dollar question, Stella, that I think everyone wants to know, because we're always looking for like that one silver bullet that's going to solve everything. And maybe there isn't one answer, but
Hmm.
if I put it to you, what do you think, what could you attribute, whether it's one thing or maybe it's multiple
Yeah.
things, Hartley's longevity to? Like, he certainly outlived like the life expectancy if you go in and look at the dog breed books.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I think it's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, definitely some genetics, some luck.
hmm
Always kept him at a pretty decent weight.
hmm
He's always been on the leaner side. He's always, up until his old age, been active, physically and mentally.
hmm
And yeah, good food. I've
Yeah.
tried to give him good food his whole life.
hmm
Um, yeah. So yeah, I
I
don't
love
think there
you.
is one thing. I think it's everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love your answer, because again, you come onto these groups on Facebook and they're well intentioned, and there's just like, oh, I did this one supplement and my dog's back on their feet and everything's
Yeah, yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
And yes, while that may happen, and I obviously would hope that if something happened for Maggie too, but it's stacking all those things that get you towards that goal that you can't neglect. Like if you may have done all those things, and if Hartley was 20 pounds overweight,
Yeah.
he probably wouldn't be here.
Hmm.
And I think we can't overlook luck. We were talking a bit before we came on about where Hartley came from. It wasn't from a breeder that was, breeding show dogs. My childhood dog, who I mentioned, Bubbles, who lived till over 16, my parents picked her up when they picked her up, the people were feeding them human cereal. So there is certainly luck that comes along with it as well. And, sometimes that mix of genes. My great grandmother, who I never met on my dad's side, smoked and lived to her late 90s. So there is a bit of that luck factor too, but I
Hmm.
think we can
Hmm.
certainly shift everything into our favor.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Definitely.
I had another dog that was a doodle who passed away at 9. So he was pretty young and
Yeah.
he was smaller. So he would
Mhm.
typically be expected to live longer. So
Yeah.
yeah, you never
Do you
know.
mind if I ask what he passed from?
He had hemangiosarcoma.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
something we hope never to, or for our dogs to be diagnosed with.
yeah, yeah.
How old are your other two dogs now? I know they're a lot younger.
Rue he will be 5 in May, which I can't believe that he's almost 5. And then Tully, the baby, he turned 2 in December.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So Hartley's the oldest, obviously. He's the
He
first.
is, but he's the boss. He is still the boss. Even though he sleeps nearly all day, he is still a boss of the 2 young ones.
I love it. Just
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. Like if he takes a toy to his bed, they would never consider trying to get it, even if he's asleep. But they steal
That's
things off
nice.
each other all the time.
Well, they've got each other to pick on.
Yeah, yeah.
Sarah commented, it's always multimodal with the foundation of good nutrition, exercise, and enrichment, and a little genetics. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, that maybe that's one thing we haven't touched on is enrichment. We have a little bit. You've talked about, Hartley still being engaged in life, but certainly whether it's being socially involved with you and the other dogs or going out and greeting people on a walk or brain games, all that
Hmm.
sort of thing, that's one area that maybe we haven't touched on, but
Yeah, I try
again,
and
vitally
bring him
important.
if the weather is appropriate. And we're going somewhere, then I'll bring him in the car.
Hmm.
He has quite the setup in the back of the car. His big plush dog bed to lie on. I have to lift him into the car, so it's not easy to get him in and out. But yeah,
Hmm.
and I think that way at least he can smell different smells and
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. So if anyone has questions, I'm going to open it up now. Feel free to pop it in the chat. If you're coming in and watching the replay, don't be shy about adding a question in later on. Myself, I'll come back and try to answer. And if I want Stella's input, she's pretty active in the group too. We can come back and answer those questions. But I did get a few sent to me beforehand. Um, Barbara, who is one of my owners, her dog is a 14-year-old lab. And if I'm wrong, Barbara, on the age, I apologize, but around 14. She asked what the single, and we've kind of asked this
Yeah.
already, what you think is the single most important thing we could do towards, sorry, the single most important thing we could do to move towards increasing our dog's longevity.
I think a big
And
one for me is weight management, not letting them be fat.
yeah, yeah. And I think
Yeah.
that's huge too.
And keeping
Yeah.
them moving, trying to keep them
Hmm.
moving.
Hmm. And one thing that I always want to research more into, and just it's again a lack of time, is how all of those things go towards reducing inflammation in the body. And then the
Hmm.
cycle that happens from there. So I'm going to piggyback off your answer and say if we can reduce inflammation, I think that we would um, really improve longevity. But that's my scapegoat because then there's lots of ways to do that as well.
Yeah.
I'm cheating. And Barbara's amazing. She is on top of so many things for her dog to keep her around, as far as longevity. So shout out to her. Question from Helen, who I know is on. I'm not sure if she's still here now. She asked me, is it ever too early to start giving your dog a glucosamine or chondroitin supplement once they're an adult?
I don't think so. Give it to them. If you can afford it, give it to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? They need
And
all
I
the help to protect their joints. So,
Mm-hmm. And I
yeah.
agree. And I get asked that question too. And I usually say once they're over the age of 1, the risks of those supplements, especially given to them at a proper dosage, are rather low. We don't want to overdose omega-3s. But usually the biggest risk is GI upset unless your dog has some allergies. And we don't know when those arthritic changes start to happen in a joint. It's not like one day it's not there and the next day it's there. It's building up, to a certain threshold where we can see it externally with our eyes. So we want to set them up, I think, for as much success as we can. And I don't think we can consider arthritis to be only a senior dog ailment. Like I talked
Mhm.
about Maggie being diagnosed at age 4. So it was probably there, you know, years
Mhm.
before that, even. I wouldn't be surprised. Hmm. And now this is the question for me, and I can't remember. I think I did give you this one ahead of time. But January is Walk Your Dog Month. And I'm curious what you say in response to the often given advice to owners when their dog is slowing down to walk them more. That, this is the problem. You just go walk them more. You gotta go and walk, and that's gonna make things better. What do you say to that?
I think, well, it depends, I think is the answer, like with things. But if your dog is painful, they're not going to want to walk further. Or if they have something that they're compensating for, which is changing the way they walk, to walk them further with an abnormal gait is probably not helpful either.
Hmm.
Um, so there's lots of other things that come into that. I mean, if you want to be able to walk them further, you probably have to address the other stuff first.
Hmm. Hmm. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I think it's a simple piece of advice. And I ask people to kind of reverse engineer that if you were already walking them and you've had to slowly shorten the walks, is starting to walk them further again going to get you out of that loop? Like to me, it doesn't make sense that it got challenging to walk them further, so now you're going to push them to walk further. Like that's solving the problem by adding more problem, I think. It is
Yeah.
potential. And I think that's where working with someone like you or I to help, you know, um, figure out what the problem is, but also give you other strategies, primarily specific exercises to
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
target the areas that are needed,
Hmm.
can't be overlooked.
Yeah.
Hmm. I don't think any questions have come up. So I would love to know from you, Stella, the top 3 things you would love for owners to know if they've got an aging dog that has one or more chronic health conditions. And they don't have to be specific pieces of advice,
Mm.
but things you want them to know or recognize.
Mm. I think just to know about that condition or conditions. So, what is its natural course? Is it a condition that's going to get worse naturally?
Hmm.
Is it
Hmm.
something that can be managed medically? So, a lot of old dogs, tend to start to have kidney disease and things like that, which can be managed through your veterinarian. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, it's so helpful to have a good vet that you can talk to
Hmm.
about what are the options, what medications can we try? If this one doesn't work, what else can we try?
Hmm.
Um, it's not every dog has to be on Metacam. If it upsets the stomach, there's lots of other things that they can have too.
Hmm.
So being able to have that and to advocate to go to your vet and say, I don't think this medication is working. What else can we
Hmm.
try? What else is out there?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
So I
one
don't know.
more. So we said,
Hmm.
so knowledge. Knowledge is power.
Yes.
Having a good vet, so maybe
Yeah.
having a good team to help you care for your dog.
Yeah.
One more thing.
And also just knowing they are going to get older just like
Hmm.
we do. It's
Hmm.
normal to slow down, for them to
Mm-hmm.
want to do less, to be physically capable of doing less. But it's recognizing, is it happening faster than you'd expect, or is there suddenly a
Mm-hmm.
big change? Because that indicates that something else is going on. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think those are great answers.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's make it actionable, and you can go back to things you've already said, but it's always nice to kind of bring it into a nice list. What would be your top three things that an owner of a senior dog, especially one with senior or with chronic,
Yeah.
gosh, I can't talk. Top three things an owner of a senior dog could do, especially if they've got chronic health issues, that they could start doing to help them increase their dog's health span.
Keep them skinny, make them skinny.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely weight management is, I would
Mm-hmm.
always put as my number one.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at your environment. So if your house is
Yep.
laminate or hardwood
Mm-hmm.
flooring, a lot of dogs, especially as they get older, struggle to walk on those, to get up on those, to turn corners on those. So
Mm-hmm.
it other ways that you can make things easier for them, being it runners,
Mm-hmm.
yoga mats, boots on the dog, toe grips, sort of
Yep.
plan for that. I mean, the carpet in this house is very old. I'm sure it's not very sanitary, but it works.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
One
yeah,
more.
keeping them engaged with you, and with if they're not super physically capable anymore, then what else are they interested in? Like with
Yeah.
Hartley, he was an avid fetcher, and now we just roll his ball a little bit, and he kind of
Mm-hmm.
bumbles after it and brings it back. Or do they like
Yeah.
using a snuffle mat or food toys or that sort of thing, to kind of keep their mind going as well.
Mm-hmm. Some way to kind of fill their cup, I think, is another way
Yeah.
to phrase that. Yeah. Yeah, I think those are all great things. And again, just n- not thinking it's just one thing, but that you can
Yeah.
impact so many little areas that can really increase your chances of success.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about all the questions that I've got for you this afternoon, Stella, and I really appreciate you giving us your insight. I'm wondering if you have any parting words for anyone that's watching this. Maybe they've got a dog that is getting older, they're starting to really worry about what's to come
Mm.
in the next couple of months or in the coming years. If you have any last words of advice for us.
No, no, it's so hard watching. I think with him, because it's been such a slow, gradual decline versus a dog who suddenly gets sick. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people struggle with that, and that whole when is it time, when it's just
Yep.
such a slow thing that happens. And I discuss this a lot with my clients too, that I really like them. That's where my little list came from, is having a list of two or three things for you that they're important for you, to the dog, for the dog to be able to do, or whatever. That for me, it's being able to physically manage him. And then two or three things for the dog too. What makes them happy? What do they enjoy doing? That
Mm-hmm.
you'll know, oh, they don't want to do that anymore, and is it because they're in pain? We can address that and try again. And yeah, it helps to have that kind of little mental check-in every now and then of, are my
Mm-hmm.
things on my list for both of us still getting checked off? And if they are, we're still doing okay.
I love that. I love that. And if anyone's interested, I did a video, I don't know how many years ago now, and it was about making promises to your dog, but I feel like that goes along the same lines, and knowing what your limitations are or what your expectations are, I think is so key. Alrighty. Thank you so much, Stella. I think that is great. I think it gives people insight that it's often the simple things that we can tend to overlook, that there's a lot of things we can do in on the day in, day out,
Mm-hmm.
that most of us aren't getting it 100% perfect. If someone came in with a checklist to say you could do X, Y, and Z, I don't think any of us are doing every single thing. There might be some people that are, and kudos to you.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most of us can give ourselves credit for what we are doing for our dogs, and that most of us are probably doing a pretty darn good
Yeah.
job. Yeah. If anyone wants to find you, Stella, to connect with you, where would they find you?
Oh, so yep, I am just outside of Huntsville, which is in Muskoka. So we're about 2.5, 3 hours, depending on traffic, north of Toronto. I have Facebook is probably the best place. I have a business Facebook page, so just
I
Paws
can
in
link to
Motion
that.
Canine Rehabilitation, and the main picture for it is actually Hartley doing an agility jump. So you'll recognize it pretty quickly when you put it in. Because yeah, I have a website, but I'm terrible at keeping it updated. So Facebook tends to have more stuff on there. Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. So I will link to that in the notes for this video. If anyone has questions after the fact, please feel free to reach out. Please keep posting in the group. I love the group as far as I learn from you guys. You guys can ask your questions. I think we all need to buoy each other sometimes because having a dog that is elderly, that is senior, that is going through some struggles can be challenging. And I think we need to see the light in it sometimes too, that there is those enjoyable moments and we all want more time with our dogs. Let's face it, that's
Yeah.
the goal for all of us.
He's still one of my silly little things for him is the room that the dogs go into when I'm not home
Mhm.
has a gate on it, and it's a pressure mounted gate with a bar across the bottom.
Mhm.
And when I leave, they get cookies in the room, and he still does this silly little like bounce down the hallway and bounces over the bar at the bottom of the gate into the room, like in his stiff old man way, and he
Mhm.
gets so excited to get in there and get his cookies. And every time he does it, it makes me smile because he's just sort of,
Mhm.
oh, I'm gonna get my cookies now.
Yep. Yep. Those simple things in life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Aw, I think that is an awesome parting note. Well,
yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us today, or if you came back for the replay, I really appreciate it. Um, so enjoy the rest of your Senior Dog Sunday. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.